Hey everyone, Brian Kelly here. Welcome to another episode of the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. And now, let's get into the episode.
All right, welcome to the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. Thanks for being back with us. And we've got our guest, who is normally a co-host here, Nick Cady. Nick and I work with the Cultivate Church Planting team. And Nick is an expert church planner. Nick, welcome.
Maybe not. Yeah, thanks, Brian. I feel like you're an expert church planner, actually.
Oh, that's nice. Maybe you weren't maybe I shouldn't have done the voice inflection, but you definitely have a lot of experience planting churches. And one thing that I appreciate about Nick, that I appreciate about you, Nick, is you not only have done the work, you've done the practical, but you also have the theological. And so Nick is on the show today, and he's going to talk about I think, among other things, maybe the state of Cultivate and how we're doing. And then also some really practical stuff about getting churches planted, more specifically, who are the people that should be planting churches? And maybe even more specific than that is, if we're in churches, if we're pastors of churches or involved in ministry, how can we create church planters?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great question.
Yeah.
So
Let's start off with, I think a question that a lot of people ask is, I hear about church planting, you get a heart for it. It's one of those things where it's almost like, it becomes a passion. You hear about it at first, maybe at a conference or a podcast or from a friend or from your church even, hopefully. And it's kind of like, yeah, that sounds exciting. It sounds like something God might want me to do. But you really don't feel like, am I the person to do this? Or maybe you're a pastor and you're scared, or not even scared, but just like, aren't there better people to do this? So let's start off with this. Mm-hmm. Who are the kind of people that should be planting churches?
Yeah, I think healthy people should be, so spiritually healthy and teachable. I would say, because I want to say also equipped, but the thing is that sometimes you get equipped along the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that one of the biggest factors in being equipped to plant a church is that you got to be teachable. You got to be, but I think it also requires a lot of faith, a lot of willingness to step out, willingness to do whatever's needed, because a lot of times that is, you got to be willing. Like, for example, are you willing to get a job in addition to planting a church?
No, we want to be church planters. We don't want to get a job.
I know. Are you willing to do fundraising? So these are all uncomfortable things. So I think you have to, both of those are uncomfortable. They're just uncomfortable in different ways.
Yeah.
And so I think you got to be somebody who's willing to do uncomfortable things for the hope of a greater goal.
Yeah, a lot of people don't take into account the sacrifice and the hard work that it's going to take. Because everybody likes the idea of it, like in anything, and not just church planting. It's like, yeah, I like the idea of, being the president of the United States. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
That seems like a fun job. To me, it doesn't, but, someone
I want
might.
to be like an airline pilot.
Yeah, I want to be a pilot. Yeah, that's fun, that you get to fly around and stuff. You get paid good. And then it's like, yeah, there's hard work involved. Yeah, I know, but, you don't really think about the process. You more think about the end result. Church planting is the same way. I love what you said about character. So if someone's out there, they're thinking about character and they're like, you know what? I'm a Christian. I've gone through Bible college, or I've taken classes at my church. I'm an intern, whatever it is. But they have a hesitancy because of, I wouldn't say a moral deficiency, but just a feeling like, am I really good enough to do this? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I think one of the great things about church planting is kind of like parenting. Parenting teenagers is hard. Like, I'm doing it right now. I've got a couple of them. And parenting teenagers, but the nice thing is, unless you adopt or something like that, generally you get to grow with your kids.
Yeah.
And so parenting a 1-year-old in some ways is hard, but in other ways it's less complex than parenting a teenager. But by the time you parent a teenager, you've got, over 10 years of parenting experience.
Yeah, exactly.
In other words, you grow into it. And I think that's what I experienced with planting a church was like in the beginning, I actually didn't need to know that much, right? Like, because I just needed to know more than like the people that I was pastoring, and they were all like new believers and young a lot of times and stuff. So I needed to stay ahead of them.
Yeah.
And that was good. It was like a good motivator. And sometimes we get somebody who's a little bit older and I have to up your game.
Yeah.
I've heard this said before. They said that most growth happens through need to know and need to grow moments. Mm-hmm. And planting churches definitely puts you in need to know and need to grow, right? Like I learned a lot of stuff about laws by being a church planter, because I was in Hungary when I first did it, and I had to learn their whole legal system. How do you register a church?
Right.
I had to learn even the language of legal language in that language.
Well, you first had to learn the actual country language.
And then I had to learn like their legalese, right?
Yeah.
And but it was a need to know moment.
Yeah.
And then you get in these situations where it's like, okay, well, how do I pastor somebody through something really difficult? Those are need to grow moments.
Yeah.
How do you pastor a church as it grows? Well, again, you do grow with it, but then you come to these inflection points in your life where you're like, I need to know this, or I need to grow into this. And so, on the one hand, we said just a moment ago, like church planting's hard. There's a price to pay, but I would tell you, it's also incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely worth it.
I would say, I almost said 9 times out of 10, but I don't know if that's accurate. I would say 9 times out of 10 that the majority of people who go out and plant churches do not feel like they're as equipped as they need to be, or they're as good as they need to be, or as mature in their growth as they need to be, but still go and do it. And on the other hand, a lot of people will not even take that first step because they don't feel like they have everything they need.
Yeah.
They don't have it all together. So I love that that you're going to grow. I love that illustration of the kid. Because when we first got our firstborn, this was 25 years ago, and I remember this, when they gave us the baby to take away from the hospital, and I was 22.
Yeah.
And Lynn was 21.
Yeah.
So they gave us a baby, and they're just, because at the hospital they're like doing everything, telling you what to do. Here's where you put the baby. Here's all this, and then all of a sudden you have it.
Yeah.
Him.
Yeah.
And it's like, here you go. And then we just felt like, oh man.
Yeah.
It's so intimidating and scary. But in that case, it's like you have to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, of course, this is what we're trying to do with Cultivate, right? It's like to the person who says, I don't know if I have what it takes. Yeah. We're coming in and saying, well, how about we do an assessment? And you can see if you have any, like maybe your assessment. I found this about myself. My assessment of myself is never very good. Like I need outside eyes on me to kind of like either confirm what I'm thinking or to tell me, nah, it's actually more like this. Yeah. So what we're trying to do with these assessments is give you some like objective tools to measure yourself by. Do you have the theological acumen needed? And if not, that's okay. Like we'll help you get there.
Exactly.
Here's where you're deficient. That's a problem, but we can overcome that very easily. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, character issues. What are the character issues that maybe other people see in you that you don't see in yourself? Mm-hmm. I always use this illustration because it was true to my life. So I moved to Hungary, and I moved in this apartment with this other guy. He was Hungarian, but he had never lived on his own either. So it was like the two of us. He grew up in an orphanage.
He wanted you to cook for him, and you wanted him to cook for you?
Yeah. Yeah. But the funny part was like in Hungarian apartments, a lot of times like the mirror isn't built into the bathroom. Okay. So like when people move, they like take their mirror with them. Oh, wow. So we moved in this apartment and we didn't have a mirror for like 2 months. And one time somebody eventually like came over and they're like, how come you don't have a mirror? And I said, well, 'cause there's no mirror in here. And they're like, why don't you buy one? And I was like, you can just buy a mirror? Yeah. I didn't even know.
You didn't know where they came from?
But like for those 2 months, here's what we did. 'Cause like we didn't have a mirror. And also, like, I had more hair back then, so it was more important. But, like, we would just, like, try to get dressed and, like, do our hair without a mirror. And, like, we didn't have phones or nothing, right? We were just, like, this feels good. And then we would like look at each other like two monkeys or something, right? And we'd be like, how do I look? And then we'd like fix each other. And I think it's a good illustration, right? Because that's like what we need in life, man, is like we need the mirror of God's word.
Yeah.
And we need the other person who can
The
look
eyes
at
of
us
another.
and say, I love you, bro, but your hair is a mess. And let me fix you.
Yeah.
Right? Let me help you. And
Did you ever have any fights when you were like disagreements? And then you're like,
funny part
dude,
was,
how do I look? Get away from me.
Yeah. But funny part was that we kind of did. Yeah. Cause like I was learning Hungarian. He didn't speak English. And so we would get in these weird fights where I would say something. It was like super rude. And he would get like offended. And I didn't mean to offend him. And so then he like wouldn't talk to me. And then I just had to look bad.
Yeah. Then you went out and your hair's all messed up.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick had a fight again. His hair's messed up. Yeah, where do I buy the mirror? And that's a good point. That we're working with Cultivate, and that's exactly what we do. We work with people that are like freshly saved, even sometimes. Like, I want to plant a church. Well, let's see. Take the assessment. Where are you deficient theologically? Do you know where the book of Genesis is in the Bible? That's probably a good place to start, literally. And then, or do you, we do the assessment with husband and wife. That's a big one. Is your wife want to plant a church?
Yeah.
And you're just trying to drag her along, things like that. A lot of little things that you wouldn't know about yourself.
Yeah.
That fresh eyes and some more experienced church planters can help with.
Yeah.
So taking that step, getting some help, with Cultivate or with other seasoned experience church planters. You said something in the beginning about the fear of, or the hard work rather, of having to go through the process, having to get a job maybe, because we think, I'm going to be a church planter. Let me go out and see if anybody wants to pay me to be a church planter.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, that's good if that can happen. But, it's just like you and I both have been on the mission field.
Yeah.
Being a missionary and being a church planter are very similar.
Yeah.
Because you get into the place where you're forced to depend on other people. And for Americans especially, that's like a very uncomfortable place to be. That's what you said, getting out of your comfort zone, doing uncomfortable things.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say like living off of support was very uncomfortable. And some church planters living off of support. It's uncomfortable because like, I don't know if you had this in Uganda where you were, but I had it in Hungary where like we'd have these supporters, but sometimes they would just like forget. And they're like, oh, sorry, I forgot to send you that money. And we're just we're checking our bank account every day.
I know. Twice a day.
Yeah, exactly. So that happened.
No, it was 3 times a day, a breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I've known church planters who they go the route of like, they're going to be bivocational.
Yeah.
That's hard because, you don't have as much time to dedicate to the church. But are you willing to do it? And then the other one is sometimes another model is like you're going to raise money for funds, but raising money is hard. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know, especially in our culture. But I think we need to get over that because in the Bible, in New Testament, they raise money all the time from different churches to support the work and the ministry, and even people like Paul himself had funds raised on his behalf or that he would write about and things like that.
Yeah, and I guess my point is that it forces you into a place of humility, forces you in a place of trusting the Lord.
Yeah.
One of my guys, Mike Payne, he's one of our pastors here on staff. He was a missionary in Hungary for 21 years. Ooh. And a lot of people asked him when he moved back to the U.S., when he came here on staff, what he was most concerned about, like what was the hardest part of coming back. And they were always surprised by his answer, but I understand it. But his answer was, I'm afraid that in coming back to the United States, I'm not going to have to live by faith anymore. My life's going to be too comfortable, and I'm not going to depend on the Lord. And
that's real.
I think that is real. But if you're planting a church, you're going to have to depend on the Lord. Problem solved.
That's the problem solved. Yeah. Did you tell him to plant a church?
No.
You need him to lead worship here?
Yeah, I
do. So when it comes to people, like individuals are asking that questions about themselves, but we also get a lot of pastors of churches that are established to one degree or another that are really wanting to be obedient. Maybe they support some missionaries and, they've done things like that, gone on mission trips, but are really seeing the value of actually planting a church from their church fellowship. So planting a daughter church that would go out and, basically duplicate what they're doing.
Yeah.
So in doing that, you look around the church and you think, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Like, I want to plant a church, but no one's really come up to me and said anything. So how do you go from 0 people that you know about to plant a church to actually raising up and sending out a church planter?
Yeah, good question. I think there's a few answers to that. One is our friend Ted Leavenworth has this saying that I like. He says, he calls it throwing your hat over the fence. Mm-hmm. And it's like when you say you're going to do something and then you have to go, you throw your hat over the fence, now you got to go, now you got to figure out how to go get it. And I think that's actually a really good thing to do as long as you do it in the right way. But I think it's a good thing. So for example, let's say you feel this conviction that we should plant a church, but I don't have somebody to send. I don't know anybody in that place. I think one of the best things you can do is to start talking about it and say, I would like to do this, or I believe that God's calling us to do this, and just be real honest. Mm-hmm. I don't know who the person is, and I don't know any people there. That's actually how I ended up planting my first church. Okay. I was serving in a Hungarian church, in the city of Debrecen, which is the second largest city in Hungary. It's on the eastern border. And the pastor, his name is Bodhi, he would just talk about it. Like, there are these other regional capitals in Hungary, and they need churches, and I don't know who we're going to send. I don't know where we're going to find these people, but it'd be great if we did one day. Yeah. And so one day I went with him because a pastor came from the U.S. and was asking him, hey, show me some of these towns that you're always talking about where you want to plant churches someday. And Bodhi's like, well, he's not going to be the one to plant the church, but he'd like to send somebody. Right. So I just tagged along with them, and we were in this town, and this American pastor says to me, man, this is a nice town. He goes, I bet you want to plant a church here. And I was like, yeah, ha, ha, ha. Uh-huh. And I'm like, maybe I do want to plant a church here. And then I started praying about it. I didn't know anybody. Just praying Lord, if that's really what you want, then give me some relationships. Yeah. And then these things started coming out of the woodwork. The Lord started bringing people. I was at this New Year's Eve party at the church a couple months later. This girl shows up and says she's from that town. And she used to go to college in the city where I worked. And now she moved to that town where she's working. And I told her, hey, you know what? I've been praying that the Lord would introduce me to somebody from that town. Huh. And maybe it's you. And it actually was through her that we ended up meeting the people through whom we started the church. And that was how the Lord opened the doors. But it was because he was talking about it. Yeah. And
he wasn't afraid to talk about it without the answers. It was more like, I want to do that. I feel like God wants us to do this. Yeah. So we pray at Cultivate, we pray together that God would put the burden on pastors of churches already to have that heart to plant other churches and then give them the tools that are necessary to do so. But so you would say, get up on Sunday and just say, you know what, I really feel like we need to get serious about church planting. I don't know who can do it or where they're going to do it, but this is something we want to do. Yeah. And then just see what happens. Yeah. So I've been doing that here in Colorado. So, I know not all of our listeners know our geography here in northern Colorado, but we've got a couple towns that are close to us, but they're also far enough away. They're kind of like bedroom communities of our city, but they're growing. And so one of them is called Johnstown, right? And this is a place where people who get priced out of our city tend to move to that city. And it's within 20 minutes. People commute in and stuff like that. But we've got a handful of people there, and it's also far enough away where it feels like, man, I hope these people stick with us, right? Yeah. But then it's like, well, what if the reason they keep coming is because they like the Bible teaching and these things. So why don't we give them a church like that? Let's help them, And so I've been telling our church, listen, we're going to plant some churches around here. I don't know who we're going to send or when, but I'm just waiting on the Lord, and you can pray with me, right? And we're going to plant a church in this town at some point. Wow. And that's nice for those people who live there, too, to know that you see them, you care about them. And because they're in the congregation, and they live there, and you're like, let's think about this town. Yeah. And then sometimes they come out of the woodwork, and then other people say, hey, my daughter lives there, or my cousin lives there, And so you start to build this kind of buzz. And then, there are other towns too, where it's like, well, we'd also like to plant in this town and in this other town. Mm-hmm. And so you start to talk about it.
And there's one other thing that I would really recommend, and we started doing this here, is that we've started advertising that we have a church planting internship.
Okay.
Now we at the church, this is years ago, I got this vision for like, it would be really cool if we could become like a hub for raising up young people who want to be in ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be a paid internship. I kind of like came up with this concept before we had anybody doing it. I'm like, it'll be a paid internship. We're not going to pay them a lot. It'll have a set duration, and it will be to help them grow into whatever they might feel the Lord might be calling them to.
But
and
it's specifically for ministry.
Like for ministry.
Yeah.
So we've had one who was like a children's ministry intern.
Okay.
We've had one right now who's a pastoral intern. It's a 1-year program, and we bring him into the board meetings. We bring him into the sermon prep. We're going to give him a chance to preach on a Sunday, right? Like basically 1 year to equip this guy to be a pastor. Maybe with us, maybe somewhere else. We'll see what the Lord does. But it's nice that it's a set commitment, right? He's not signing up for forever.
Right, yeah.
He's signed up for 1 year, and we're signing up for 1 year, right?
Yeah.
And then we've had one guy come, and he's a Spanish speaker. He's from Bolivia, and he went to Rio Grande Seminary, which is in Texas. Mm-hmm. He's a Spanish-speaking seminary, evangelical, it's Baptist. So then he wanted to do an internship with us to do church planting, and now he's going to go as a missionary and church planter somewhere in Asia.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, right? So
plot twist.
I know. Yeah.
It's going to Asia.
I was surprised too. Yeah. So, but he spent that time with us like, okay, how does a church function? What kind of needs are there?
Yeah.
How can I get involved?
Because he had the theology, then that's what we were talking about. He had the training in the biblical training, so he knew what he was talking about. But he didn't necessarily know how a church runs or what he's supposed to do when he, how do you get ready for ministry and Sunday and preaching and all that.
And that's one of the ways that Cultivate can work too, is like you can come and do an internship, or some people might even call it a residency at a church while you're preparing and praying and moving towards that.
That's ideal, because what we do at Cultivate is we have coaches. We have over 60 coaches that are seasoned veterans in all kinds of regions around the U.S. and elsewhere that can, coach kind of from afar. Yeah. But then you get down to that next level, and that's the mentor position. The mentor position is someone, ideally a pastor within your church, that is doing the work that you can, for lack of a better word, tag along with. If you can't do an internship, that's the next best thing. Yeah. But that's a great idea. So you obviously have to budget for it. You have to have the means to do it, or not. I mean, you could just say, we're going to do this internship and, pay your own way kind of thing. Yeah,
it can go either way. We pay. I mean, not like a lot, right? And
but enough to kind of survive and do this, be there, because if you got to get a job, you're not going to be able to come to the staff meetings on Tuesday morning or whatever.
Yep. And sometimes it's like a part-time thing where it's like, you get a job and 20 hours a week you're here learning. Yeah.
Okay, and then that's a year. Do you have any curriculum or anything, or you just kind of show them the ropes?
Right now, we haven't created any curriculum outside of Cultivate. So Cultivate has some resources, not really a curriculum per se. It's more like, here's some a la carte resources that you can choose from. What we do here is we kind of take it person by person. We say, okay, like for example, our current intern, he's not really praying about planting a church. He just wants to become a pastor. You got a real focus on discipleship. Yeah. So we say, okay, well, if you're really focused on discipleship, then we're going to bring you into the discipleship aspect of what we do as a church and let you, get your hands wet and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you get to the place where because you've been walking through it with him, if it's a church planting residency or internship, then you're going to be able to encourage him to say, look, I know you don't feel like you're ready, or you feel like you got a lot of pieces missing, but we think that with God's help, obviously, you can do this. Yeah. And, you can even send them to some churches that aren't really doing that well with like crazy pastors or whatever, and be like, look at this guy. Yeah. He can do it.
You just sit in the back row.
Yeah. Look at this. Look at this church. Yeah. Maybe don't do that. Yeah. It's like, but it's, I joke around about that, but it's kind of true. It's like, that was one of the things that I thought, like, and that's the thing. You look at, church planters or missionaries.
Yeah.
It's like Hudson Taylor. I want to be a missionary. All right, study Hudson Taylor. And then you read the story of Hudson Taylor. You're like, I can't be a missionary.
Yeah.
There's no way I could do what he did. Well, go look at some normal people.
Yeah.
That's the top cream of the crop.
My favorite one is William Carey. Did you ever read about him?
Yeah.
That one was really funny because like his wife, she sadly had some like mental problems, and she would like follow him around when he would like preach on the street corner, and she'd be like, "Don't listen to him.
This guy's an idiot."
And then,
poor guy.
Yeah, and then the other part about William Carey was like he had a job. He worked for the East India Company, and like so he was like a factory manager, and then like he was trying to like translate the Bible at night by candlelight. So, he would just use this like dictionary and be like, what does this word mean in Hebrew or whatever? And like look it up. And like he did all this dictionary work. He created like a New Testament in one particular Indian language and then like gave it to somebody after working on it for like a year by candlelight in the evenings. And they were like, yeah, like this doesn't make any sense. And but he kept going. And for 7 years, William Carey didn't have a single convert. But then he did. And then there are still Christians to this day who trace their lineage back to William Carey.
I visited his church in India when we were there one time, long time ago.
But 7 years, man.
And
I feel encouraged by that. It's like difficult wife situation.
And failure, and just feeling like, you're not measuring up. Why am I even here? Why am I even doing this? We talked about that with in our last episode with Mike Neglia. But it's not, God uses normal, flawed people. That's all he has to work with.
That's true.
That's us. And if you step out in faith, God's gonna meet you. In fact, I would say the more deficient you think you are, I mean, you have to have some confidence, obviously, in the Lord. But the more deficient you think you are, the more God is able to meet those needs.
And that kind of goes back to what I was saying. When you were asking at first, like who should do it, the first thing I said was somebody who's teachable. And I think that's why.
Exactly.
Because if you come in and you just think you got it all figured out.
That's the worst.
But if you come in with humility, but like confidence in the Lord, confidence in his word, but humility in regard to yourself and teachability, man, I think you're set up.
Yeah, for sure. And that teachability and humility is the willingness to listen to feedback. And you get your feelings hurt when someone's like, man, you taught Sunday and it was horrible, and here's 5 reasons why. But you learn from that and you grow. It's like, you got the baby home from the hospital and you put the car seat in backwards. You're supposed to, you're not supposed to put it front ways. You're supposed to put it back ways. So to put it front ways is backwards. And it's like, that could have been really bad. Good thing you didn't get in an accident. You got to put it this way. And each of those little mistakes, so the next time you get in the car, guess which way you're going to put the car seat in. So
you put the diaper on wrong.
The wrong way, and then you have to clean up a mess. We've had to. People have had to clean up my messes, and I've had to clean up people's messes. But at least we're doing it. And churches are getting started and planted.
I know, like, I'll tell you one, I don't think it was like a mistake on my part, but it was like, you end up with all these stories, right? There's like war stories. I had this one where we planted our church in Eger in Hungary in the midst of like, these kind of like, we call them commie blocks. They're like these 10-story, cheaply built apartment buildings built by the communists. And like 30,000 people lived in this very small area just because they're all in 10-story buildings, right? So our big idea was we'll go into all the buildings and knock on all the doors and invite everybody to church. So we did. And so like a bunch of people came out to church like this first Sunday. Like I'm teaching Matthew chapter 1.
Out of the commie blocks?
Yeah. And I'm like, because that's where our church building was at. I was like, man, this is awesome. So I'm teaching Matthew chapter 1, which is the genealogy. It's not like the most, it's interesting if you know all the stuff.
You're interested in it. It's interesting.
And about like why it matters. Actually super important. But at the very end of Matthew chapter 1, there's this verse that says that Joseph didn't know Mary until after the birth of Jesus. And I explained that means like they didn't know each other like physically until after Jesus was born, but then they did. And then they had other kids, and those kids are talked about in the Bible. And one of these ladies who came from the commie blocks, she stood up in the middle of, like, with all these new people, and she's like, "You're a heretic because Mary is a perpetual virgin,"
Yep,
and like walked out. And I was like, oh man. Yeah. So I had this situation where like I spoke Hungarian, and I was like people kept asking me like, okay, you speak Hungarian well, like when are you going to start preaching in Hungarian?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. It's just different to preach in Hungarian. And so I preached to the translator, even though I knew Hungarian really well. And that was awkward because then, like, if she mistranslated stuff, then I'd like correct her all the time.
Yeah.
And it's awkward for everybody.
Yeah.
But then one day, you know, in Hungary, it gets like really hot and they don't have air conditioning a lot. Probably, I don't know, maybe like Africa.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
And our church building was on the first floor, which in America is the second floor.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like is higher up, so it's even hotter. And, so, I mean, it was like 100 degrees outside, and it was like, I don't know, 150 degrees in the building. I mean, it was hot.
Yeah.
And we had these 2 giant fans. Like, our microphones are turned up because the fans are blowing. Anyway, the translator girl, her name was Kati, and she's translating, and then from, like, heat exhaustion, passes out, hits her head on the piano. It's like a grand piano.
Did it go bang?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so she's, like, out cold, right? So we got this girl in the church. She's a nurse. So she comes and like, she's like tending to Kati and like spreads her out on the chairs, and like 2 other people are like tending to her. And then I've got like all these other people. They're just like sitting there like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And I had to decide, am I going to just like wrap it up?
Yeah.
So I decided I'm not going to wrap it up. I'm just going to preach in Hungarian. And I just finished my sermon. Like, I was like,
was that the start?
That was just, and from then on,
Dang.
in Hungarian.
What was her name?
Kati.
Kati. It took Kati falling on the grand piano for you
Yeah.
to. Yeah. This, if you went through, I wish I would have wrote more of the stuff down that happened when we were there. We had a worship conference one time, and our church was up on the 4th floor of this high rise, and you know, we could fit comfortably about 400 seats.
Wow.
So it was we had a big floor, and then the floor below was the children's ministry, and then the floor below was businesses and other businesses, really congested area. And we had a worship conference one time with a popular Ugandan worship guy, and we didn't expect, like, we moved all the chairs out in standing room only, and there was probably like 600 people up in this. And those buildings are not, they were not built the greatest.
Yeah.
And I literally thought I was going to die at that point. There were many other times.
You guys
could
would have been fine because you would have just squished.
We would have squished. Although we did have a riot outside the church, and a bullet went through the children's ministry.
No.
Yeah, but thankfully it wasn't during service. But we got in the service on Sunday morning. We're like, what was that a hole there? It was a bullet from the riot the week before. But they were jumping and dancing, exciting worship in Uganda, and it was literally this concrete building was like, I thought I was done for.
Yeah, but to your point, like, you have all these war stories, but you know what else you have? You have these amazing stories of faithfulness of God, like, that you would have never experienced if you had not stepped out in faith and taken on the hard work.
Yep.
But man, so enriching.
Yeah, so rewarding. People often ask me, like, when it comes to Uganda, because we were in Uganda for 10 years, and they're like, do you ever miss it? And I say, oh, yeah, I miss it. I miss the people especially, and it was so great and rewarding. I usually explain it like this, like, living there, it was the hardest place and the easiest place. It was hard because it was hard to live there physically, the infrastructure, and there was no power half the time, and people didn't do the right things that they're supposed to do, you know, all the Western stuff that we bring in and all that. And then, but the easiest thing was the ministry, because it's so rewarding when you step into a difficult situation, the need that's there, because not everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
When it comes to church planting, you got cities and villages around the United States that need more churches. People aren't willing to do it. So,
yeah, I remember one story. I was with this guy. His name was Attila, and he was kind of like my right-hand man when we were planting the church. And we went to this place that we wanted to rent. It was a music school. It was right downtown in like the nice historic center of our city. And we had a certain amount of money that we could afford because we didn't have much money and stuff. So this place was way too expensive. Now I look at it, I'm like, I can't believe that. It was like $400 a month. But at that time, you could have told me it was $1 million.
Yeah,
I didn't have.
You didn't have 400 or $1 million.
Yeah. And so we were like, oh, what are we going to do? And there was like one other place that we thought, okay, maybe this will work, but it wasn't in the center. It was way out in those communist blocks, you know? So anyway, we go to this place and like we had a number in our head, like we can afford this much.
Yeah.
And then we talked to him and everything seemed to be going okay. Like we got everything we needed. It was like kind of ideal. And then the guy's like, all right, well, we're like, so how much would it be? And he's like, well, I'm going to talk to some people and I'll call you.
Yeah.
And so he called us when we were in the parking lot outside, and the number was like drastically lower than that. And like, so we could like do it.
Yeah.
And we were just amazed. And this guy, Attila, he said to me, he goes, you know what? You should write these things down because you don't want to forget like what God did.
Yeah.
And I never wrote them down, but I'm talking about it with you.
Well, you remembered them, but think of all the things you don't remember.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I feel bad about. It's like, man, I should have. They always say journal. Always journal stuff and write it down. I mean, some things you never forget, like you know, people falling on the piano or running around naked or whatever. But it's the things that you did through God's strength that stick with you, and not just in Africa, around, you know, all over the place. Yeah. When you step out of faith, it's when you see God come through. Yeah. And not until then. Yeah. Good. Quickly, what's going on with Cultivate, and how can we help our listeners?
Yeah, Cultivate's going strong. You know, we, as people might have heard, we left CGN. So we were a part of Calvary Global Network for years. We started out of there. But in recent times, we've come separate. We've become an independent ministry. And, you know, it's been good. So we continue to have new applicants. We continue to be coaching people. We've got new applicants from the United States, from Europe, from other places, Africa, planting churches in Uganda. And so we're moving forward with our plan to eventually have regional branches that are, you know, designed for language groups and for regional locations. And so, we're just continuing to champion church planting and continuing to provide resources for church planting.
That's right.
Somebody even asked me, like, is Cultivate still going? I'm like, man, it's going just as much as ever.
Yeah, so. If not more. And like you said, a lot more doors have opened up. People that might have been averse to CGN or whatever, that have been able to feel comfortable. Like, I want to plant a Calvary Chapel, especially, and that's what we want to help you do. Yeah. CultivateChurchPlanting.com. Anything else you want to share, Nick?
I think that's it. I think, but I would just say, throw your hat over the fence, man. Like, start talking about it and see what the Lord might do.
Do it. Pastors, get up on Sunday and be like, if you're listening to this, you're already thinking about church planting. So just be like, look, I think we should pray about planting a church. I don't know what that looks like or how it's going to happen, but let's pray about it. Let's think about it and see what God does. All right, Nick, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Brian.
Good time.